I finished residency in 2018. Does anyone around my generation feel like they missed out on the golden age of EM? I know it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine 20 years ago, but it sounds like it was better, at least based on what the more senior attendings say. I get so jealous of the retirement posts and EM docs of people with 30 to 40-year careers. There's no way I'll make it that long. Does this sound like it could have been written by you? It's time for the shift change. My name is Mike McDonald.
And I'm Gina Blocker.
We are emergency physicians with over 35 years of combined experience in community, military, and academic settings. We have courtroom experience.
Both good and bad.
We have business experience.
Both as owners and employees.
We are each married with 5 kids.
But not to each other.
Odds are good that if you're an emergency physician, you will experience burnout, job dissatisfaction, assault in the workplace, depression, anxiety, litigation, and more. We've chosen a career that can literally take years off our lives. So this podcast is here to bring you the doom and gloom and to encourage you to quit.
Wait a second. No. We are 2 emergency physicians who have survived all of the above and are still standing. This podcast is to help you prolong your career in spite of the odds. We will tell you the things we wish we had known when we were starting our careers, use an evidence-based approach to the problems facing our specialty, and offer solutions that have helped us and others using the lessons we've learned along the way.
Okay, that sounds better. So welcome to the Shift Change podcast, and we're going to talk about burnout. Gina, tell me something you wish you knew.
One thing I wish I knew back then is that burnout isn't a personal failure. It's actually a predictable outcome in a broken system. You know, it's a feeling of, I wish somebody had told me that feeling disillusioned didn't mean I wasn't strong enough or passionate enough about emergency medicine, and that needing boundaries didn't mean I wasn't dedicated. I needed less shifts, and I didn't have to prove my worth by pushing through them in pain, missing moments with my family, or staying in spaces that drained me. I spent years trying to figure out if I had to earn rest. Now I know that rest is a requirement. So that's sort of where I am.
Yeah, I think you and I both kind of grew up in the age of medicine. It's funny to read that post that we found on Facebook that we started with and think about. I mean, you and I have been practicing for those 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up in that age of medicine. Yeah, some things may have been better, but at the same time, it was kind of this. There was this mindset that the tougher you were, the more that you could swallow and stuff down inside, the better you were.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of this competition of victimization. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna work 12 hours straight. Well, I'm going to work 16 hours straight. Well, I'm going to work 20 hours straight. You know, and it's just this sort of badge of honor if I can sort of suck up more misery.
Mm-hmm.
And it leads to that mindset that you're describing of if you don't want to do that anymore, you're less than, and you're somehow inferior.
Right. And I think the pivot for me was a point that I realized that boundaries weren't bad. You know, when you set boundaries, I actually craved the boundaries that I set for myself in ways that seemed a little bit crazy, right? Like, if I'm tired, I should rest. But I would get up and work another shift and be more tired and rest less. Like, those things, it was incongruent. And I think realizing that the boundary for me was being firm in my decision making made me weak, right? Like, why couldn't I muster up the energy to push forward, to push through? There's no badge of honor for exhaustion.
Right.
And so when I realized that, you know, it all flowed over into the presence I had with my patients, even the complaints I was getting, me working well together with staff, my relationship with the nurses, my relationship with my family, with my kids, with my husband, right? All those things played a part in my exhaustion. There's no substitute for that.
Yeah, we've talked for really since we started talking about doing this podcast. We've talked about kind of these issues. One of the things that really jumped out at you that you brought to my attention was the Medscape survey of physicians and how it broke down burnout and depression rates by specialty. And emergency medicine is always at the top, always at the top. I read one article getting ready for this that said that emergency physicians experience burnout 3 times more frequently than other specialties, which I'm not sure that's great data. I certainly wouldn't diminish other specialties. I think we're not alone in this. I think this is a community of medicine problem, but I do think it is unique to emergency medicine, partly because we have that mindset of, I got this, I can do this. And we're sort of wired that way. There are good things that brings to our ability to handle crisis situations, but there's also a downside where it affects work-life balance, and it really makes challenges for sustaining this for a career. And I think there are a lot of ways that plays out. You and I, getting ready for this, we picked one Facebook post that we found, but there are a lot that we ran across that describe basically the same thing. People just frustrated with the job, people looking for a way out, kind of hopeless for the future that anything is going to change for the better. And it's funny because as we were looking through these earlier, I told you I could have written any one of these. I've experienced all these things in my career, so I could have written any one of these posts at different times. Thankfully, I don't feel like I'm as burned out now as I have, but I think you and I have both been there. I don't want to speak for you. I don't think you're too burnt out right now, but maybe you are.
I mean, I've ridden the roller coaster of burnout, and I've realized that one of the things that was poignant for me was to accept that therapy would really help me move through the stages, right? Because it was a grief. For me, it was like grief when I changed my schedule, stopped working nights, didn't work weekends and holidays. I mean, that was almost like the pure essence of an emergency doctor, right? Like, we're open 7 days a week, 365. And if you don't sign up for that, you didn't meet the mark, right? And here in my mind, I had defined myself by those standards, right? And so, in order for me to really make a change, I had to allow myself the opportunity to see that I was more than a schedule. I was more than somebody who just worked a night shift or pulled a weekend, or, there were other things about me that made me a fantastic ER doctor. And it wasn't just about what was written down in code, the unspoken code of emergency medicine. And so that was big for me in moving forward and pivoting in my career, opening my own urgent care, setting my own hours, my own pay scale, hiring my own staff. Those things are sort of non-traditional roles for the typical ER doctor. So in that, I had to accept that there were boundaries I had to set for myself that were outside of the constraints of what I initially claimed as my own boundaries, right?
So interesting that you should use those terms, because we haven't actually talked about this, but the 2025, the latest Medscape survey of physicians is titled "If Boundaries Are Set, It Is Possible." Physician Mental Health and Wellbeing Report. I think that's really interesting because you do have to set boundaries in order to do it. When they ask the question, can doctors in your specialty be happy and well balanced? Guess who's at the bottom? Emergency medicine is 63%. So 1 out of 3 of us feels like it's not even possible, that it can't be done to have work-life balance and to actually enjoy your life as an emergency physician, which I think speaks a lot into the problem. And today we're really just focused on identifying the problem. We're going to talk more in the future about things that can mitigate that. But this is not an insignificant problem within our specialty. This is a big deal because we're losing physicians. Part of the problem is chronic overstaffing, right? There are really 3 parts to burnout. There's physical or emotional exhaustion. there's decreased personal efficacy, and there's cynicism. And I think if you look at just the doc working next to you, you can pretty readily see those things in varying degrees. There are different ways to measure burnout. There are different scales that have been developed that measure it. But I found this really interesting. There's a very good correlation if you just ask a physician, are you burned out? As to how they would end up scoring on that score. If they just answer that yes or no question, that correlates really well to these kind of break it down in parts questionnaires.
But
I think that's really interesting, but because you can feel it.
You can feel it. And even when it's sort of like the purple elephant in the room, right? Like, do we often inquire? Are we even working close enough together sometimes to even meet at a point where we feel vulnerable, the vulnerability to be able to address that question in true honesty? Am I scared that someone's going to see inside or pinpoint me, right? Or target me, right? For maybe not being able to meet the mark.
Yeah. Do you think that
So,
stigma still exists in medicine, that mental health, like needing help with mental health, is a problem? Like, is that stigma still there?
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even when I was in full transparency, even when I was going through a tough phase in my career, when I was transitioning, pivoting towards other, paths to utilize and to monetize my degree, I was feeling like, okay, well, talking to a therapist. Well, do I have to write that down somewhere? Is someone going to, am I going to be reported? Is there some sort of like governing body that finds out if I'm even prescribed an antidepressant or, something to help me with my anxiety or ADHD or, is that, do I need to disclose that? If I disclose that, something to a therapist, will it be written down somewhere in my medical records that is discoverable, right? So, I mean, there's even fear in that. I mean, even with the HIPAA laws and everything, I mean, you still think about those things, right? So that plays a role in even seeking help, right? The fear
Yeah.
of disclosure.
Yeah. I asked the question it's really a rhetorical question, right? Because I think that stigma is so deep and so profound.
Mhm.
When I was sort of at my lowest point in my career, this was in 2018, I recognized the need to get help. I couldn't physically make the phone call to schedule an appointment with a counselor. I knew that I needed to. I wanted to do it. I
Mhm.
wanted to have the appointment. I wanted to get the help, but my wife had to make the phone call and schedule the appointment. I physically couldn't bring myself to do it because it felt like such a deep failure
Mhm.
that I could not do it. What I wish I had known, I wish that I knew that I was not alone,
Mhm.
because I think because of the stigma, we tend not to talk about it. And so we all think that we're the only ones experiencing it.
Mhm.
And Facebook post after Facebook post tells us that that's not the case. And once you finally open up and start talking about it, you realize that this is a common problem within our specialty.
The natural human desire is to connect. I still believe that we're built to connect, right? We're connectors. And I feel like, the default should be we should have a camaraderie and discuss and connect and almost unionize on the fact that mental health is still very much a faux pas in our field, in the medical field. And I think there needs to be, I mean, we lose countless names and numbers of physicians annually, daily. I think it's like 1 to 2 physicians commit suicide a day.
Yeah.
Whether it's dealing with depression, anxiety, whether it's burnout, whether it's hopelessness, depression, whatever it is, we're losing people daily. Like it's a pandemic. It spans the nation, right?
Yeah. And we're here to let you know that you're not alone. One of the things that spawned this podcast was an interaction that you and I had at work one day. You had just gotten back from Philadelphia. You had just gotten back from there and had some personal things go on that led you on that trip. It was certainly not a vacation for you. And just knowing that you had been there, I asked how you were doing. And you told me that you weren't doing very well, which I just took as a friend responding to a friend. But that had a much bigger impact on you because that was, well, I'll let you tell it from your standpoint.
Well, for me, it was a time where it was a stressful time in my life. And, I had trusted in that moment that it was the moment for me to be vulnerable with you, but with myself, because I had never connected and told anyone, that I was talking to a therapist, that, I'd had some really tough times and that I was, you know, really crispy around the edges. I think at that point, I had wrestled with the burnout, but it was very burnt around the edge where you try to scrape the part of the toast off that, that's kind of where I had been. And when I shared that with you, it was an awakening for me. It was a point where I was able to connect with a colleague. And I didn't know if you had had an experience like that, if you've ever felt like that, if you were burnt out like that. But, I had shared that I had been able to seek therapy for the low points, for the depressive points in my life, through the burnout. And I was able to kind of release that and really kind of a part of me awakened in that connection, in that vulnerable moment with a colleague who shared the experiences that we shared at work, similar critical cases, illnesses, just carrying a lot of the job home, feeling unappreciated, feeling like this is more than I bargained for in my career choice, and needing to seek another way to, one, bring home an income, and two, survive, right? And so in that moment, I was able to be vulnerable, but it wasn't an awakening for me because I was able to share for the first time that I was struggling. I was struggling.
Yeah. And that was the first time that you felt free to do that.
Mm-hmm.
How many years of practice?
15 years of practice. That was the very first time that I ever let anybody in that I was having a hard time. And in that moment, I realized that you validated me. You didn't overtalk me or shame me. And you supported me. And I think having that in a colleague, but having that in a friend, showed me that this person overstands, not understands, overstands what I was standing in, right? And what I was going through. And the vulnerability to say, was depressed and probably seeking counseling for reasons that were a multitude of other reasons, like the freeing feeling of that. I can't put it into words. It's a soul thing where you felt like a freedom, like you almost were able to take flight again within yourself. And that was therapeutic, both diagnostic and therapeutic.
Well, and I'm glad that you took the chance to be vulnerable, because not only did it continue our friendship, but also it led to this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And really what we want to do is get rid of the stigma. We want to make it okay to be vulnerable. We want to make it okay to process the stress of the job with each other in healthy ways. And so we're going to get more into that. That's what this podcast is about. Things that we wish we'd have known when we started out our careers, things that we've learned along the way, and things that we want to use to help you in your journey as well. Feel free to reach out to us at the shiftchangepod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us your story. Tell us your struggle. Tell us where you're at right now. And if you're deep down in it, if you're feeling suicidal, call a helpline, call a hotline. Go get help, because it's out there. You're not alone. With that, we'll close for the day, and we'll see you next time on the Shift Change Podcast.
Only a doctor would say, I'm just a doctor.
We have to change the narrative.
I need to rekindle this curiosity about why we do what we do.
Give yourself time to mourn the change of the shift that you're in your life.
It's okay when it feels like too much.
It's okay.